Thank you for this intro. So everyone, Monday at 2 o'clock, we're back on track on Mondays 2 o'clock. Um, and we are so lucky that we will have Belit moderating on Monday because both Rikke and I are taking the Danish winter vacation off. I will be going to a very heathen and savage place. I'm going to Austria to be skiing. And I'm not sure what Rikke will be doing, but you're in the very good hands of Belit on Monday at 2 o'clock. Okay, now it's 4 minutes past the half hour, uh, and I would like to introduce this session on policy making, policies related to the culture and creative industries. As you know, Epic We is a Horizon Europe funded project aiming to empower young people to participate in shaping European culture and their own future by imagining, creating, and enhancing cultural values and heritage through game making. So we're going to try and relate this to policy. And before giving the floor to Luc Schmerber, who is a thematic expert for a smarter Europe at the Interreg Europe policy learning platform, I would just like to make sure that we are talking about the same thing. I know that Luc and I will, but I also want to make sure that you guys are on the same page as us. So when we're talking about policy, it's not about, company policies that you can dress down on Fridays. In this case, we're talking about policy that refers to a public intervention in a specific domain where certain challenges, problems, and needs have been identified and must be addressed. So what do I mean by a public intervention? It means that it's an intervention by a public entity. A public entity could be a ministry, it could be a city, it could be a regional development agency that has been given certain tasks. Usually, it will mean that the intervention, the action, the people that are doing it are being paid by taxpayers' money. Not always, but often they are being paid by taxpayers' money. So in this case, we're talking about policy where there is a challenge that needs to be addressed. For example, when we had the Corona crisis, clearly the public, we saw public interventions. We saw there were specific needs. We saw, governments buying face masks, etc. That was, a public intervention because there was a clear need. But there are lots of these. You could even say the fact that we drive in the right side of the road is a public policy. It's a rule that has been, if you drive in the left side of the road, then you will, not only crash, but you will also have broken some public policies, such as traffic policies. Anyway, I think now we all got what policy is all about. And I would like to give the floor to Luc to tell us about policies related to the culture and creative industries. And I know Luc is especially focusing on the regional aspects. So we can talk about policies that have a national implication, or a remit, that a government of a country have decided, or regional, which it could be like Catalonia or the greater Copenhagen area, or Wallonia, in southern Belgium. It could also be city. So cities can have certain policies. For example, here in Copenhagen, it's the city that runs the schools. So here you could say educational policy at the school level would be a city policy. You also have European policies. Obviously, the most well-known one for many years were the Common Agricultural Policy, supporting the agricultural sector of Europe. That was a policy. But anyway, Luc's main area of expertise, but he also is much wider, is on the regional level. And now I think I've been doing a lot of ad-libbing. Luc, the Zoom is all yours.
Yeah, thank you, Rasmus, and thank you to Rasmus and Billit and the Creative Business Network to invite me here. So Luc Schmerber. I'm French, living in Germany, half German, let's say. And I've been working on, as Rasmus mentioned, in the framework of your regional policies. I will show a bit exactly the framework. I'm a thematic expert in the Interreg Europe program, and the Interreg Europe it's a bit different from Horizons, but basically it's a program that brings together or tries to bring together all regions of Europe. They address more specifically the regional level, like Rasmus mentioned, and they have one basic objective is to improve regional policies. More or less, whatever the areas, there is a broad scope, but one of these priorities is the smarter Europe, which is all about innovation and competitiveness, and obviously those topics are familiar to you, I guess. And we have had in the previous programming period, which ended formally 21, but the projects lasted a bit longer, quite a number of projects addressing cultural and creative industries in different ways. And my presentation today will show you a summary of what those projects were dealing with. So they were bringing together regional, local authorities, like Rasmus described, mostly regions and municipalities, sometimes national, because in Europe we also have small countries which are barely larger than let's say German regions, for instance. But still, it's mostly regional authorities, and they've developed different
And
policies.
when you say it was Interreg Europe, I suppose it was between regions also. These
It was between regions. So
yeah.
basically, all projects have the aim to help to support regions, helping each other to develop policies,
Mhm.
learning from each other, developing new policies, transferring policies from one region to another. And they produce a lot of material because in order to do that, they produce good practices. And so what they think are good practices, they explain about what they did.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of learning about that.
Which is quite different from like the cohesion funds or the structural funds that, would finance something specifically in a region, like a new
Exactly.
bridge or a road or a runway for an airport or,
Exactly. It is different in that sense, and it's also different in the sense that it really focuses, like you mentioned, on policies. It means helping those authorities develop a new program for something, a new intervention frame, or which we call a policy. So
yeah.
they are not building anything; they are changing the intervention framework,
Mhm.
meaning at the end it means in some case channeling money towards the CCIs. And this is
Yeah.
basically what's in
Cool.
the end what happens now. It's
Okay.
trying to channel more money, or in different ways. So what it does. So I will try to present a bit this what they did, how the summary of what they did in the past, let's say seven
That's
8.
excellent. And I will try not to interrupt you too much. And if any of you have questions, please write them in the chat and we can then grab them afterwards.
Yeah, of course you can interrupt anytime. That's clear. So I guess you can see properly. I hope you can see properly my slides. You will see some of those slides are a bit wordy. I will not read them, but I did them in the spirit that you might want to come back to it and read some things. And at the end, there are further resources which relate to the Interreg Europe policy learning platform, so that you can have access to the materials also, which has been produced. Because I just in one presentation, half an hour or 20 minutes or whatever, I cannot go into all the details. So I choose to give an overview, and which means a lot of different topics, but they should enable you to get more in details if you are interested. So this is
Great.
the optics. So let's see. So yeah, I will see. I cannot move my slide. Yeah, so it's working. So Interreg Europe, I will not go here into details, but you will have access to my presentation. So it includes a short overview of what is the program. So I will just skip it right now. We mentioned the most important things. Interreg Europe is a program that helps regions to work together to learn from each other on different policies, so on different topics. So just skipping it or going very, very fast. We have 36 partner states in the program right now, just incorporated recently last year. The candidate countries, Norway, Switzerland. So you can see from here it's a large number of regions involved in the program. We cover all the priorities currently, the policy priorities also from the regional development funds, smart, green, connected, social citizens. Maybe a word here, the culture, because it represents a bit some of the issue or the discussions you have about CCIs. In the previous program, the CCIs tended to be under the smart SME competitiveness topic. Right now, they are more under social and culture, and it's a bit also what we learned from policy making. Sometimes the CCIs are in between, or it's not always clear for the policymakers where they should be. So this is one of the challenge, and it's reflected in the program.
Indeed, they sometimes fall between two chairs, also in the sense that is it soft diplomacy for ministry? Is it regional? Is it you can even use creative industries for public health. So
exactly, and it's one of the policy issues we had. So I'm not showing everything, but you will see if you have time, if you're interested, you can go to the website and look at what we offer. I wanted to mention the policy learning platform because we are talking about policy, and Interreg Europe has done something nice, I think, which is not only funding projects between regions, but trying to collect the knowledge which those projects produce. So we have something like here, a good practice database and some thematic publications where you will find also the sources of information, which I link in my presentation on the last page. It means we have this database which is consistently kept alive, where good practices from different regions are displayed, and this includes obviously culture and creative industries. And we also help very specifically, this is a bit innovative, regions to make new policies. We call it peer reviews or matchmaking. So it's like small projects, but in 1 or 2 days. So very small projects, short time condensed. You see them up. We've done a lot of those meetings. We come to a region with 4 or 5 experts. The region has a challenge. Most recent challenge we addressed in culture and creative industry was in France, in Amiens Métropole. Amiens, it's a small city, French city, medium-sized city between Paris and Lille. So it's somewhere here. If you look at my mouse, let's say in north of France, and they are creating a new culture and creative industries ecosystem around with a focus on video and movies, and they have a new building where they will be developing activities and a lot of actors, and they asked us to bring experts on site to work on the governance of the system, so how to mobilize the partners, how to help them working together. So we spent 2 days there to discuss this, and with leaving them with some recommendation and ideas how to do that. And this is very nice in the Interreg Europe program, I think, because it keeps policy making alive. Let's say we try to improve on the go, not only in projects which last for 3 years. So this I wanted to mention. It's limited to policymakers. You need to be a policymaker to apply, but it's there.
Sorry, but what is understood as a policymaker? So it's not necessarily a politician, right? It can be.
No, a policymaker is for us, or it's an organization which is the owner of a policy. So it means it's a regional authority they have a budget and they have policies on industry, they have policies on culture or whatever, and they are a policymaker. A municipality is a policymaker. It's an organization. If they have a policy, an economic development policy, a tourism policy, or whatever, so it's an organization. I think you described it well, Rasmus. It's usually a public organization which has been where an administration with some elected people who decide what they should do, and they use tax money to do something out of this money. Those are policymakers. Yeah. Typically, for us, a business support organization is not a policymaker. A university is not a policymaker. So it's the guy who can decide on the public money and what is done with, basically. I have very quick 2-3 slides on European policies, because it's not the focus of today, and it's not my focus. You see here from the most recent EU industrial strategy a few years ago, they have those 14 industrial ecosystems which they watch on a yearly basis, and just to show the cultural. You see the cultural and creative industries are on the map here on the right. They are part of those 14 industrial ecosystems which are considered to be specifically important for the development of the.
Wouldn't you also put digital and textile and tourism, and maybe even to some extent retail as part of the cultural and creative? Anyway, it's a matter of definition, and it can never.
Yes, it's a matter of.
It never ends, I guess. This discussion.
It's an old discussion for cultural. It's an ACE-based. It's a statistic-based approach. In reality, it looks very different, of course. But I agree with you. But this is a discussion which is, of course, cultural. I would consider that cultural and creative industries are more or less like digital. They're basically transversal. They can be more or less everywhere. But this is the statistical point of view. I just wanted to highlight that the visibility is high enough to be on the higher European agenda. Let's say, regardless of the definition, they are here, so they are visible, and there are things done. So for supporting the creative. Just maybe you know about the European cluster, the Eurocluster, the cluster collaboration platform. A lot of clusters, but creative is there. So also in the cluster policy, which is very important in regional level in general, creativity, CCIs are there. Rasmus, obviously, and some others, you know well, the EIT and the EIT culture and creativity. There are around, I don't know, 9 or 10 EITs around Europe, and culture and creativity is one of them. So it's just a short message to say, look, the culture and creative industries are relatively high on the European agenda, and of course also on the regional agenda. So this is just a quick overview to show, okay, look, in the policy making, CCIs are well represented. Let's say there is a lot of things doing. So I'm not going to European programs. There are too many, and it's not the objective of the meeting today. There are several programs. So you can of course look at the pages of the European Union, but what I wanted to insist today, and what we agreed with Belit and with Rasmus, is that we look on this regional level, like Rasmus mentioned. So I call it no local level. So local is basically regional, municipal. All those regions who participated in project with us, what were they dealing with? I have 3 points mainly. I try to summarize. The first aspect, and I will go in some details if we have time. Let's see, in all of those 3, is the strategic development of the CCIs, and you will see more later what it is about. But this is more this aspect, to put the CCIs in the map on the regions, to create ecosystems, to make them visible, to put them formally into the regional development strategy, into the smart specialization strategy. I don't know if people have all familiar in this circle with those topics, but helping to put the CCIs on the policies, on the economic and innovation policies in the region. This is one main effort. Why it is important, obviously, because if you are on the policy agenda, if the name is in the paper, it means there is a budget going there, basically. And if your name is not on the paper in the policy, there is little chance that there is a budget going there. So this was a very important work to put the CCIs on the higher level in the regional policies. A lot of regions were working with that. Another major issue was the access to funding. Because it's often considered that the CCI have some specific challenges with respect to funding, challenges related to some of their specificities. We might go more in detail into that. But basically, many regions were working on creating funding schemes accessible to culture and creative industry to help them develop. So this was, and this is, pretty in the normal way to work, of course, for policymakers. They channel funding to the areas they want to submit, and there were some specific aspects here. And the third aspect I would like to cover today are infrastructure and environments. The many regions were working also on creating places where the CCIs could develop. So it could be incubators, it could be co-working places, it could be creative hubs, and different names, different type of infrastructures. And this, let's say, was the third pillar of what the regions were doing in our projects. And I will go into some details. Let's see. So why strategic development of the CCI? So the challenges, we discussed that a bit before. You mentioned lack of data and metrics. What is CCI exactly? Where is it starting? Where is it ending? Where is the perimeter? So many regions, and this is important for policy. If you want to support the sector, you have to be able to tell the politicians, look, the numbers are, it's so many jobs, it's so many euros in added value, and so on and so on. And as the CCIs are a little bit specific and not so easily connected to one, let's say, it's more easy to count those figures for automotive. It's more complicated for CCIs because
Luc, has any of the projects been able to somehow look into the potential of something, because on one hand, if you want the policymakers to pay attention to an area, the data shouldn't be too good, It shouldn't be like, yeah, we have 90% of all the jobs are in the creative sector. Then they will go, great, let's make it 95. So I think often it has been difficult for like these industry initiatives, when we look at data and metrics, to show what could it be, what would be the impact of focusing on the gaming or the movie industry in a certain region, or have any of them been able to? Because I understand, of course, you want to measure, exports and job growth and, innovation stuff, but have any been able to not just look at what it is, but actually what it could be pre-project?
Yes and no. They were first focusing on measuring what it actually is. Mm-hmm. Examples are coming. Austria has been quite early on this, and here is a national aspect, and they managed to identify that €1 invested in CCIs generates something like €7 or €8 for the overall economy, or things like this.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's amazing, but it was by looking in the mirror and then saying, look, if it worked the past years, we should we could do more in different sectors because it might have a similar effect in other sectors. So the thing you are asking, this kind of forecasting was not done, but they focused first, because this was lacking, on identifying what is the added value. This was the first step for them, and then to basically say the result is positive, so we should do more of it because it will bring even more positive thing. This is the way they processed, and so they said, okay, the CCIs are then, there should be done more to promote different sectors, to bring the CCIs together with other sectors, because they will boost also the other sectors. This is the idea, the thinking was behind, and some made some figures, like Austria, for instance. Yeah. Just looking and presenting the challenge, I cannot go into details, but we mentioned, if I look with the perception of cultural activities, yes, this is what we mentioned before with Rasmus Wolfram. Where are the CCIs? When you talk about policy, are there well, this is very practical issue. When doing policy, is it the economic department who is dealing with them? Is it the cultural department who is dealing with them? Which department is dealing with them? And this has an impact on the policy. So a big work done in the regions was to help overcome these kind of issues. Let's say having both directions, both sectors, the cultural and the economic, to make it simple, or research also working together when they talk about CCIs. And this is what I mean also by strategic development of CCIs, to say, look, to have some joint policies developed both by the economic and the cultural sectors to cover better.
And couldn't we say that, I know it's generalizing grossly, that rather have the CCIs placed in the economic departments, because they're usually higher up on the hierarchy and have more funding than the cultural ones. They're usually, I mean, even here in Denmark, when the king meets with the government, when the king meets with the government, the prime minister is right next to, and then the foreign minister, and then finance. And at the very, very, very end at the table, we have the minister for culture, maybe together with the minister for Nordic affairs and equality.
Yeah. Yeah.
So isn't it usually, if you can't place it in two, go for the highest ranking one, and that's usually the financial or the economic or the labor market one.
This is one of the main challenge, let's say, in terms of policies, which the region addressed, and the work they've done in terms of policy making is basically, this is a quick summary, but you could say the policy work which was done is to put them written in the economic development strategies. To say, look, this is an economic sector as such, and it's an economic sector which helps develop the other. It needs to be in the economic development strategy. And this is basically you identify the issue, the work which was mainly done by those regions to highlight this economic view, because mostly people had the perception of the cultural aspect, and they don't see the politicians in general, let's say. So it's the big work done. It's about education and awareness, and so obviously to put them on the economic map, and to put them. I mentioned the smart specialization strategy. Basically, smart specialization strategy is the strategy on regional level, which decides where the innovation funding goes, and so on. And the challenge was there, and the policy work was there. Look, let's put the CCIs on the strategy with a name and a marker and a direct link to funding. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And not let them to the cultural, which is important, of course, and which has also economy, but but that was the idea. So yeah, basically you will see the main policy recommendations. That's what we mentioned. So the regions, they perform the mapping, because if you perform a mapping on regional level, then you will mostly see, oh, the sector is relevant, there is something happening, it has added value, it brings added value to other sectors. Then you will see that you need I called it multi-level governance models, where you need to involve different actors, because it is a sector which has different kind of actors. There are the cultural actors, but there are the economic actors, there are some in between, and there are some doing both. And so it's a bit maybe more complicated than for other systems. So it takes some work to bring the people together. And the governance model, we should try to have those people work together, the cultural and the economic. So this is the third main recommendation. And the last one is what we just mentioned, a summary. Let's put the CCI somewhere on the agenda, on the policy agenda. So those are the main recommendations in terms of policy. I see the time is going on, so I will just...
That's fine. That's
fine. I'll briefly show some examples. I will not describe them, because it's some regions which have been specifically active. The Basque Country, for instance, have done a lot about the creative industries. So in my documents, you will be able to look into what they did, but they did a lot of work to put the creative industries on the regional innovation strategies and so on, and to...
Maybe we can say that the Bilbao, with the Guggenheim Bilbao, kind of has been used an example of, you get Frank Gehry to draw art museum, and that kind of drives an economic development of a region.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's a good example also on how we are moving a bit away from only this, but not really actually, to foster the transformation of regions. Because if you look at the Basque region, the Basque regions used to be a heavily industrial regions with coal, iron, they were building ships and so on. So let's say a lot of heavy, dirty industries. And they've engaged into a transformation process to have a more modern economy, a more diversified economy. And they've placed the CCIs at the core of that. And of course, the Guggenheim Bilbao is the one thing you will see from all over the world. It's very, very visible. But behind this, there is all this policy work to say, look, our past has been this heavy industry, but the future is a bit different, and we need the CCIs, and that will help us change the way we do business and the way we live. And in the Basque Country, it has changed a lot.
And sometimes it takes I know it's not that simple, but it takes a single, the transformation starts with, you build an iconic museum,
for instance,
and that kind of get people's minds and thinking, oh, there is a different future. It's kind of like directing the rider on an elephant, saying, okay, this is where we want to go.
This example is striking, of course, the Guggenheim, because it's like something which is a global thing. But this is also when I mentioned before the point, the infrastructure for CCIs, and so that there are also different kind of infrastructures which helps, but which are not the Guggenheim Museum, but they help make it visible. Like you mentioned, you need an anchor point. You might need an anchor point, and the anchor point, it can be the Guggenheim. It can be a nice place where people meet, and in smaller aspect, it can be, I don't know, some street art festivals which are whatever, but different kind of thing. But you need anchor points, and the CCIs. Well, that's the nice thing, because well, you can create very, very nice things when you this, and you can reach the public, like with the Guggenheim, for instance. So it gets visible. Mm-hmm. So this was a great work, and it's an example. I encourage you to look into the documents. The Basque, they've done a lot. I mentioned Austria before. They had a big strategic process. I showed the next document, and this was very interesting. I liked it a lot. It's national topic, policy, but still, why? Because it has been a co-creation process, which has been really interesting. They brought together a number of industries, of politicians, of regional actors, and they had something like a 1-year process to see how to. It was 2015, I think, which is relatively early for one of the first ones doing that. And I like the topics. They ended up with those 3 priorities, which first, empowerment. It means that, okay, we need to do something to support the CCIs to develop as themselves, let's say. Transformation, because we were discussing about transformation, and to see, look, we are facing transformation challenges, the digital transformation, the green transformation, the social inclusion, whatever challenges, and to say, look, the creative industries, they have is one of the sectors, maybe the one who can has this impact on the other sectors, and you can involve them and say, look, it's so you have creative and digital, creative and green, creative. They can help because they can reach people, they can generate new things.
It's kind of horizontal in a way.
Yes.
A while ago, I was at the World Free Zone Organization annual meeting, and I was like, they wanted to have a creative free zone. I said, well, you use creativity in all the free zones because you think about what font you're using and what how every company will think of at least its visual strategy, and that is a creative process. So I think it was also Nesta who published a study that showed that there were more creative people employed in non-creative sectors, simply because the non-creative sectors need them to differentiate, to stand out, to recruit, and etc. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's exactly that, and I think it's one of the most interesting things I liked in those policy making is the idea that they developed in Austria to say, well, every sector should meet the creative. We need to make everybody meet the creative because it will be good for everybody, and so they put it at the core of the strategy to say, look, the third pillar is innovation. So also the creative industry they can also innovate, including technology innovation, to develop themselves. So that was the third pillar. But I like this idea of transformation. I would highlight it also to say, look, this is the core of this strategy work, to say, look, creative, they are transversal, like digital today, and you need them everywhere. And this was not obvious. Maybe it gets more obvious. I think at the time it was probably not. So this I liked it. So this is a good example. It's a living thing. It is moving every year. It's a revised strategy and so on, and it's still going on. So it's 10 years old, but it's been actualized. So it's still there, and it works quite well for Austria. And they are the ones who produce those figures and numbers, and to measuring that, well, the impact is strong of the creative industry and the economy. It is. So they overcome this statistical approach to creative, let's say, to say creative is this, when our creative it can be much more. It depends how you look at it. So this was a nice.
I think in Austria they also have a program for how creatives could contribute to innovation in all the non-creative sectors.
Yes, exactly. They started this, and they created vouchers and different.
Exactly, they had a voucher program where I think like a truck company could get 10,000 euros to buy creative services to
something like this. They create and this is what policy does. So they created this voucher program, and it ran for a few years. I remember some Christina, Christina.
Yeah, Christina Koch, yeah.
Koch presented the figures to me, and they stopped the program after a few years. You know why? Because it was so successful that it didn't need to be subsidized. I mean, the process worked. Let's say.
But wouldn't it be great in the case of here with Epic We and the cultural game jams that there would be a voucher program where cultural institutions could get 10,000 euros to buy a cultural game jam to enhance their involvement, engagement of youth in their activities. So
this is the one thing, one of the main financial tools that were used across regions are the vouchers, because vouchers, so they are low sums, low amounts, but in the case of creative, I think it worked particularly well because you can start doing things with low amounts. And you can, and it's meaningful. It triggers something. It's not like you're not, so you can really do something with the vouchers, and they have proven quite successful, not only in Austria, but especially in Austria. So this is something very, very interesting. Yeah, some other examples. So I need to go a bit. Just the Friuli Venezia Giulia. This was also they started from the culture, and they moved towards the economy, and they had also very comprehensive policy process. And basically, you will see that it is always about creating bridges between the cultural people and the economic people, and to create synergies and create fundings for the CCIs. So that, and those processes take time. And the generic recommendation, what we learned from those regions, is that those processes need to be, to a large extent, bottom up. You need to involve the people, the industries themselves, to understand what they need and what they can do, because it's complex, and and they all said this. They were only successful in making policy with the CCIs when they involved the people from the CCIs from scratch, and having those working groups, co-creation, whatever, very important. None of those success examples we have was a top-down example. There is some top, of course. I mean, there is a but the process was always bottom up, and this was striking in this area. Yeah, so I moved to access to funding. So access to funding, I think, you have been confronted with this probably. Typically, there are different challenges for fundings for the CCIs, because they might be too small sometimes. It is fragmented industries. You have a lot of subsectors. They don't have really IP, or IP is complicated when it's related to CCIs. So when you go to the bank and they ask about your assets, you might have difficulties. Depending on the companies or the people you're talking with, there is maybe not a lack of financial management skills, which was mentioned, and so on. So dependence on public funding when you talk about culture. If you look at a region, we were working with also like Provence or Alpes-Côte d'Azur in the south of France. They have a lot of festivals. Festival d'Avignon, Festival de Cannes, and so on. And there is a lot going around those festivals. There are many of them, but they are actually highly dependent on public funding, and so there are different issues for CCIs to access funding, if they are, at least they are perceived. So the regions worked on this.
For anyone who is in doubt about this funding, just look at the end of almost any kind of European movie or TV series, and you will see that usually the money for the funding of this movie or TV series is put together of often 20 different sources and lots of
Yeah.
different countries. I actually recently saw a fantastic documentary on Brazilian balloneros, people who illegally put up hot air balloons. And it was funded by the Danish Film Institute and the Catalan Institute for Cultural Enterprises, and so it was really a lot of different funding and also quite diverse. It's and it was taking place in Brazil, so you can really see how it's really fragmented the way it's the funding
Yeah.
comes in.
So it appears that that was obvious. The regional policymakers they did notice. Okay, it's difficult for CCIs to discuss with banks, but it's also difficult for CCIs to access regional public funding programs because the way they are designed doesn't really fit to them. So what did they do? Well, it's no rocket science. So they develop specific funding schemes because if there are specific challenges, this is typically the way policy works. Rasmus mentioned it. So there is a specific solution. So there were specific funding schemes for the CCIs. So we mentioned the vouchers. Many regions started with vouchers. And you mentioned also, Rasmus, the second largest example we have is the film industry or movie videos. So many regions and countries set up film funds. So they call it film funds or similar.
Indeed.
So this was the next big move, I would say, to create film funds, which helped those companies.
And didn't wasn't it? I remember there was this Woody Allen movie called Vicky Cristina Barcelona, um, and I also remember Kieslowski made some fantastic movies called Bleu Blanc Rouge.
Yeah.
And when asked, I can't remember with Andy Warhol, with when asked Kieslowski why it was called Bleu Blanc Rouge, he said, "Well, that's where the money came from, the French." Uh, so, so isn't it also sometimes so that the region, they can pitch different regions against each other?
Yes.
They can finance it by saying, "Oh well, it's going to be Vicky Cristina Copenhagen instead," and then if the money will come from Copenhagen, then the movie will take place there. But
this is one thing. Of course, they promote the region, which is something they want to do. But they also act on this because I mentioned the specificities of the sectors, and they act on creating funds for, it can be funds for movie, video, and so, because they want to make sure also to be able to keep the creative people in the regions to work because of these issues of funding. When you have a project, you have money, and then the project ends, and you might not have money. What are you doing with the people? And then so they try to create different ways to ensure that there is some ways of keeping the studios alive in some way, or keeping the studios able to live and to have a certain stability even between projects, and to avoid losing them, because then if they are gone, they are gone. I mean, then it's an issue. They lose the creative people. So and of course the regional promotion, as you mentioned, because then you will have the name of the regions, the sceneries. You can what exactly?
We can all watch these 007 James Bond movies, and we can.
For instance, yeah.
I remember there was one that was filmed where they had to close down the metro in Vienna one evening because they were filming from the opera house in Vienna or something like that. So it's certainly for the promotion of it.
It is certainly for that, and in the perspective of the creative industries, it's a way to help the studios in general to stay and to keep the people as good as possible, even between projects. So that there are different schemes doing that.
And not that I want to go off on a tangent here, but I think that's one of the strengths of the creative industries, that they have this high symbolic value that can really drive people.
Yeah.
When the expo took place in Shanghai in 2010, Denmark did something really simple. They took the statue of the Little Mermaid from the harbor in Copenhagen and
Yeah.
sent it to Shanghai, and placed it in the pavilion there. And it was the second most visited pavilion. And it was just a statue made by a random sculptor who made that thing. And many years after, the actual story was told by Hans Christian Andersen,
Yeah.
and that drove people there,
Yeah.
Chinese people especially. So they have these, they can really get people going. That's what I find so fascinating by the creative industries, that's
Exactly.
so different from the transportation sector, for example, or mining, or you can't really get your blood boiling with that. Well,
Then this is probably, I agree with the reason why the film, movies, and so on, animation got this specific attention. A lot of policy work was done to this sector. And then there are some interesting things also if you look at the other type of CCIs, let's say, or in general. You have regions that made an effort to adapt the existing schemes to them, and adapting the criteria to the specificities of the CCI. So maybe not asking for big collaterals or whatever and so on, and trying to say, look, CCIs, if they are industries, they don't want only they want to be industries like other industries, and they develop products and services, and maybe there is just a need to make some criteria in some public program to adapt them to the CCIs. And some regions, they went on and discussing with local banks and say, look, we can make a program, we help you fund the CCIs, but we adapt the criteria you have, and we develop a guarantee scheme on regional level to help you, to encourage you to support the CCIs, because they are normal. Well, in a way, they are normal companies. They need to make big profit, and they generate employment and so on. And there was just a need to adapt a bit the initial funding. So that was also a policy work to say, look, let's try to make access to funding a bit smoother to CCIs by adapting the criteria, and maybe having some guarantee schemes from the public money to reduce the risk from the private investors. Yeah. So reducing the dependence on public money by helping them getting to public funding, to private funding. So this is this was done a lot. And the third point we discussed already, Rasmus, a bit, those schemes for innovation, for cross-sectoral innovation. A lot of programs, Europe-wide on regional level. It can be a voucher, but not only a voucher. It can be larger projects to say, look, if you have an innovation project, you should include some creative people into your innovation project and things like this, and promoting the use of creative, like design, for instance.
I always like to remind people that San Pellegrino, Ducati, and Ferrari are all members of Italian Alta Gamma, which is the creative industries organization of Italy. In other words, bottled water, a motorbike, and a car are considered creative products, rather than beverage and transportation. So, yes.
I think in those areas, like the automotive, the design has a strong impact for a long time already, but it's not the case in every sector. And they made the policy work for those regions was to say, look, could be the case for every sector. There is a good reason for every sector to use them, and not only for cars, but also for other industrial products, which is not obvious for everybody. Before you go,
I always say that if you're selling aircraft fuel, you don't need lots of creativity around your product. You simply need to push the price down, and then you will have. There's some where price is the only factor.
in some B2B things, yes, clear, yes, sure, yeah, sure. But well, when you have a client, you talk. There are many places where it can play a role. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And should play. So those schemes were done for that. So those are the main, let's say, the main areas. Nothing really new maybe here, but the lot of efforts to develop the access to funding, and especially the access to private funding through adapting the criteria. And the second, well, the trying to support the cross-sectoral innovation, bringing the CCIs together with other sectors. And this might require some funding at the beginning because people don't know each other, they don't know what can come out of it, and so you need some starting help. So that's what people were doing, let's say. So nothing maybe very surprising, but still a lot of efforts and a lot of policy making in this area. So I will not go to the good practices. I have a series of good practices in my presentations. You can look.
But I can tell. Is it okay if we share your PowerPoint in?
Yeah, it's meant for that. That's why there's a lot of text and content on the
Okay, great. So we will. So people in my creative networks in the Games for Culture group, we will share Luc's presentation and the cases that you can look into. It's super interesting, and
it's just a lot of material. I know it's too much for one presentation, but just yeah. So do I still have a few minutes, Rasmus?
Yeah. Go ahead. We're running a bit over time, but it's fine. I'm sorry. I'm the one that haven't been.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's because otherwise it's very boring if it's only innovation friendly infrastructure. So we mentioned at the beginning. So I don't need to run to all the topics, but basically it was so it doesn't need to be a Guggenheim like we discussed, but most regions or many regions noticed, okay, it's important to have a place to make the CCIs visible in some ways, to make what we do visible. So visibility, they do it with the figures. They make the mapping, and they can tell the politicians, look, we have so many jobs, but they make it also visible by having a place where creative can show what they are doing, where they can come together, they can mingle, they can meet with other people, and they can develop some activities. And this was, let's say, the third pillar of those policies, besides the strategic aspects and the funding. So the infrastructure, they can be incubators, they can be others, fab labs, so whatever. I'm just showing some examples. Incubator in the Netherlands, like this kind of castle which was developed. So mostly they select either very visible places or places which offer good conditions for meeting. So this was the Netherlands. If you look at Bologna in Italy, they did a lot of things. It's not only one place, but they did different things. Luna did specific dinners to make people meeting, and bar camps, whatever. A lot of things. They used also in Bologna and other places in Italy. Probably you have heard of that. Those pop-up things. If there are places in the city center which are empty, some shops which are empty, then you can for some time bring in some cultural and creative industries into there, and you can help them being visible and so on. So many people did things like this to show, to showcase the CCIs. Here you have an example which was one of our major policy examples in this area in Valletta. They completely took part of the historical city center, like the building here, and they make. There is a fab lab here. There are meeting places also, including for larger meetings, meeting rooms. There's a food space. There's a roof garden where the people can come and on the top here you might just see a little bit. There is a roof garden where people can just have a walk. Their maker space, and they created in the old city center a public place where the projects can come and do something, but also where the public comes. So the public is coming there for some concerts, for some activities, and they see the creative people working and so on. So this is it's 3,000 square meters, rather large thing. One example. Mm-hmm. What do I have? We have some research industries, research park. You mentioned also, Catalonia, Barcelona has done a lot. They have those creative research industries park with a lot of money invested. The creative hubs in Belgium, some examples like here in Tournai, some creative hubs with different rooftop activities, Fab Lab, co-working spaces, things like this. Here it's the planning phase in Namur in Belgium also, but the place does exist now, in the middle of the city, creating a new place where creative 3,000 square meters with a Fab Lab, co-working offices, a bar where people can come, young people can come. So those are typically the things that many places, especially the municipalities, because they are close to that, they have the space to do that, and this was the third axe, let's say, to develop CCIs, to give them a space where they are visible, where people come, where students will come and meet them and organize. Put them at the core of the life of the city. So it's beneficiary to the city, hopefully also to the CCIs. And there are quite a series of interesting places like this. And this, I think, it's my last slide. You will see I have the link of all my resources, let's say what we've developed. So it will be part some webinar recordings, some stories, articles, policy briefs. So it's a bit heavy for a presentation, but it's basically a source of material for a reading source, let's say, for further.
But definitely very interesting. And we do need to wrap up, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it was really good to have this broad overview of what policy can do. And it was even I wouldn't say limited, it's not the right word, but it was focused on the regional level.
Yeah.
And I think for you, the participants, I think I'd love to hear from you about what have you had, have existing policies influenced your activities? Have you had any policymaker relationships that have been interesting? What have you have you tried to work with this? Because it sometimes is a bit difficult to wrap your head around how to work with a public entity and the budgeting and the influencing, the lobbying, actually. We have Vincent Dupré, who has a question here. Do policymakers think it is worth the money, for example, of the track to have 300 people per month, which is 10 per day, for a €1 million budget? Yeah, that's an interesting question, Vincent.
Yes, my answer is they do it. They think it's worth, because there was a program, Creative Wallonia, behind this.
Creative Wallonia, yeah, I was part of the high-level advisory board or something.
Yeah, and the assumption based on at least what was experienced also in other regions is that there is a return on this at some point. There is an incubator. There should be new companies coming out of that, and those are cities which were in need of transformation. I mean, Namur are not like being not having been high-tech cities or whatever. So there is a need for transformation. Yeah.
So I suppose it also depends on what parameters you measure on, because of course attendance is one thing, but does it have spillover effect? Does it attract more families, taxpayers to the city? Does it create new business and things like that? And that, of course, can be questioned. I mean, could be questions. And at the end of the day, policymakers will have to look into, should we invest in, better schools or infrastructure, or in a creative hub like Track. So
Yeah,
that's what.
and exactly, and the visitors, like for Track, is not the only thing. It's also an incubator. Huh?
Yeah, yeah.
And you mentioned one topic because there are so many. I did not have time to dig into that, but it's also playing a role. But it's the attractiveness of the city in general, and the creative people, and to have a creative atmosphere in the city is deemed to be an asset for attracting qualified workers, highly qualified workers, because they request some kind of creative offer. Yeah.
I think it's kind of like in the past it was the MTV Music Awards, which city would host them, and now it kind of like when we see the Eurovision Song Contest, they become really like look at how great we are
Yeah, yeah,
usually.
yeah.
So these festivals and cultural events really is a way, I guess there's a reason why. Where is it that they're doing another Louvre? Is it Louvre Dubai, or that is taking a brand, essentially taking a brand like the Louvre, or taking a brand like the Guggenheim, and saying, "Hey, we can do that too." So anyway, we're 10 minutes over time, but thank you so much, Luc, for being part of this epic we policy learning, or sorry, not policy learning, capacity building
Yep.
webinar and workshop. Thank you to all the participants as well. And for those of you arriving late, maybe, Belit, you could just here at the end, you can be the raisin at the end of the sausage and remind us what's happening on Monday.
Yes, I was just putting it in the chat.
Great. Yeah. Okay, you did. So
So
register now
yeah,
for Monday's event. You can see it in the chat. And thank you everyone for staying tuned. As you can hear, I think this is a really important topic because policymakers can do a lot of good if they're being directed in the right direction. They can also come up with crazy ideas such as buying Greenland and other stuff. That's also a policymaker making ideas like that. So, but anyway, enough for now. I wish all of you a pleasant Friday evening and a fantastic weekend. The first weekend of February. Enjoy. See you. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.